My name is Lyle Jetterman, and I'm 38 years old. There was nothing particularly unique about me, except that I was Gloria's husband, she's 36, and the father of Robert, 12, and Anna, 8. From the outside, we were the picture of a happy family, but beneath that image was the constant pressure of financial responsibility that came with being both a husband and a father. I spent 5 years working at Countryman Realtor before ownership changed hands. Gabriel Zillow purchased the company from Bernie Schleifer, shaking up everything. Real estate wasn't my first career choice. Actually, it wasn't even on my radar. I originally set out to be a lawyer. After finishing law school, I had already been married to Gloria for 3 years, and by the time I graduated, she was expecting our first child. The job market for new attorneys wasn't exactly booming, but knowing I had a family to support, I took whatever opportunity I could find. The first position I landed was at a law firm that handled real estate closings for banks. It wasn't my dream job, but it paid the bills. While I was studying, Gloria worked as a bank teller, earning just enough to cover our rent and groceries. I picked up odd jobs here and there to supplement our income, and we relied on loans and scholarships to get me through school. Given that Gloria became pregnant right around the time of my graduation, turning down a steady paycheck wasn't an option. That was the first of many compromises I made for the sake of stability. Back in those days, home loans were still a personal transaction. Banks lent money directly to buyers. It was an old-school, gentlemanly profession. My role was to sit at the closing table, representing the lending institution as the deal was finalized. For my services, the buyer paid around $500, with another $500 coming from the insurance company. A total of $1,000 changed hands at every closing, but of course, that money went to the firm. I only saw a fraction of it in my paycheck. But times change, and the days of small, honest earnings soon gave way to large-scale greed. Shortly after Gloria and I welcomed our second child, smaller banks were swallowed by larger ones, and then those were absorbed into even bigger financial giants. The era of individual retail lending faded away, replaced by high-volume wholesale mortgage operations. Instead of carefully handling a handful of closings, I arrived at the office each morning to find stacks of mortgage documents waiting for me. I am sure the firm was making a fortune, but rushing from one closing to the next, barely stopping to breathe, gave me an uneasy sense that this system wasn't built to last. Over 7 years in the legal field, I climbed the ranks, not to partner, but to an independent contractor role. I was paid per transaction, earning $75 for every closing. With 7 or 8 closings per day, 5 or 6 days a week, I made a comfortable income. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was all temporary. Something felt off. Like the whole industry was teetering on the edge of a collapse. That's when Bernie Schleifer approached me. He was looking for what he called a sharp guy with a law degree to join his business. His main legal contractor was set to retire, and Bernie was gearing up to expand. His company, Countryman Real Estate, held a stake in Scarlet Woods, a development with 100 completed lots and plans for another 400. It was just 2 miles from Techno Park, where a massive industrial project promised 2,000 new high-tech jobs. Bernie was ready to capitalize on it. Schleifer wasn't just a builder, he was a deal maker. He could convince a bank to finance multi-million-dollar projects, but he couldn't sell a home to a couple debating whether they could afford granite countertops or a variable rate mortgage. That's where I came in. Oddly enough, Bernie and I clicked right away. I enjoyed the process of selling homes, and I was meticulous about details, especially when it came to the paperwork. Plus, working in real estate had given me a crash course in identifying hidden profit streams. I found ways to boost Bernie's earnings by bundling additional services: home insurance, moving companies, landscaping, everything a home buyer might need, all through our agency. We quickly became a one-stop shop, squeezing every possible dollar out of every transaction. Bernie focused on construction and big-picture deals, while I handled operations. He made a fortune, and I was well compensated for keeping the wheels turning. But Bernie saw the financial storm before most people did. Bear Stearns was the first warning sign. But the real catastrophe came when Lehman Brothers collapsed. The day the market crashed, Bernie was unfazed. "What goes up must come down," he said. "But real estate always rebounds. If we can weather this, we'll be in a prime position when things turn around." He was betting on a future recovery. Meanwhile, I kept pushing to maximize every dollar, which he funneled into bigger and better land acquisitions. But Bernie had one problem. He was a big fish in a small pond, and he wanted to swim in deeper waters. One evening, over drinks, he dropped the news: "I sold everything. he said. What? I asked, taken aback. Relax. The new owner isn't going to shake things up, at least not immediately. He was right. When I met Gabriel Zello, the first thing I noticed was how young he was, not even 30. Yet somehow he had managed to buy Bernie out. He was taller than me, younger than me, and looked like he had stepped straight out of a magazine. Golden-haired, confident, and every bit the image of a prodigious business tycoon. I suppose I could have resented him, but he was too charismatic to dislike. Working for Bernie had been a solid experience. He was driven but careful, never one to take reckless risks. Gabe, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. He thrived on high-stakes moves and had no problem putting everything on the line. Right from the start, it was clear that acquiring Countryman had stretched his finances thin. He wasn't a builder like Bernie, nor was he a natural salesman. His talent was in finance and management. He had a knack for making money move fast, and once the real estate market rebounded, his gamble on Countryman began to pay off. As for Bernie, he was off to Florida, ready to roll the dice in the high-stakes real estate game. The night before he left, I wished him luck. "Come with me, kid," he urged. I shook my head. "I'm not a kid anymore. I have a wife and 2 teenagers to provide for." "Suit yourself, but one day you'll regret it." I hoped he was wrong. Just to be sure, I checked the job market, but there weren't many good options. My old firm was barely holding on. Stephen Pender, one of the junior partners, had managed to keep things afloat, but the best offer he could make me was only a third of what I was currently earning. That wasn't an option. So I doubled down on keeping Countryman running smoothly. For the most part, I liked working for Gabe. He gave me plenty of freedom to manage the day-to-day operations and treated me well. Did I have any doubts about him? Sure, but nothing major, just small things that nagged at me. One example? Bernie never bothered with a formal company holiday party. Gabe, however, took things to the extreme. He spared no expense, renting one of Saratoga's top resorts, off-season, yes, but still an extravagant display. That December, the holiday party was a lavish affair. It wasn't just for the staff. Contractors, bankers, and realtors all received invitations. It was a full-blown networking event, with Gabe playing the role of host, like a king presiding over his court. Maybe there was a business strategy behind it, but the sheer excess of it all made me uneasy. By midnight, my discomfort had settled into something sharper. I had arrived at the party with the most stunning woman in the room, my wife, Gloria. We married fresh out of college at 22. She had taken a soul-draining job to support us while I was in law school, and for that, I would always be grateful. But she also made the decision to stop taking birth control while I was studying for the bar, leading to an unexpected pregnancy. In the end, maybe it was for the best. We became dedicated parents and built a strong family. While I was busy struggling to rent out properties, Gloria was raising our kids and working nights to earn her doctorate in child psychology. When our youngest started school full-time, she went back to work at the State Department. That was also when she began what I now call her running obsession. Gloria had never been overweight, just curvier than the stick-thin models in magazines. But at 30, she transitioned from casual swimming at the YWCA to serious long-distance running. Every morning before sunrise, she pounded out 5 miles through the woods. In the evening, she added sprints to her routine. Soon, she was outrunning nearly every local competitor. Only national-level runners could beat her in 5K and 10K races. She even ran the New York City Marathon 3 times, finishing among the top 100 women. I wasn't out of shape either. I hit the gym 3 times a week and biked 20 miles on summer weekends. But I wasn't carved out of stone like some Greek sculpture. Still, I admired Gloria's discipline. She was up before dawn, returning home sweaty just as I was waking the kids for school. I had every reason to be proud of her. So when we walked into the Christmas party together, all eyes turned to us. The chatter in the room died down. Gloria stood just over 6 feet tall in her 3-inch heels, exactly my height. Her jet black hair, usually tied back in a ponytail, tumbled over her shoulders, shimmering under the ballroom lights. She had taken the time to dress up that night. Fitted black dress, scalloped trim, a modest dip at the neckline, and a daringly short hem that flaunted her runner's legs. The dress hugged her toned frame, leaving no trace of the slightly soft college girl I had married. She was a knockout. Gabe wasted no time swooping in. He barely acknowledged me before taking Gloria by the hand and leading her to the dance floor. I had to admit they made a striking pair. He was taller than me, leaner, more muscular, but there was something unsettling about the way he looked at her. It crossed a line. Then, just before midnight, he took it further. Under the mistletoe, he kissed her. Not a polite peck, a full, deliberate kiss. I've never been the jealous type. Sure, my wife was beautiful, but I trusted her. We had been through too much: law school, raising children, paying off debts. We had survived sickness, financial stress, even an early pregnancy failure. Some marriages crumble under pressure, but I've always believed that hardship is what truly binds two people together. Gloria and I had endured, and our love had grown stronger because of it. That night, she drank a little too much and basked in the attention. I chalked it up to the atmosphere. I took my wife home, and we didn't talk about it. She acted as if nothing had happened. I convinced myself she just had too much to drink. It meant nothing. 6 months later, Memorial Day weekend rolled around. The year had been good. Business was booming, and clients were flooding in. The final week of May brought an intense heat wave, the hottest in over a decade. Countrymen's accounts were overflowing with funds from home sales, all set to be deposited on the first business day of June. After the holiday weekend, we'd process the checks and transfer payments to the banks. That Friday, as I was wrapping up for the day, Gabe walked into my office. "You coming to the cabin this weekend?" he asked. For weeks, Gabe had been raving about the mountain cabin he had rented in the Adirondacks for Memorial Day weekend. He made it clear the invitation was for both Gloria and me, but I wanted no part of it. "I'm not sure what Gloria has planned," I said, hoping to bow out. "Oh, she's coming," he smirked. "She's looking forward to it." I narrowed my eyes. "We talked on the phone," he added quickly. Something about that didn't sit right with me. Still, when I called Gloria, she was excited. Maybe this was the moment where I could have stopped everything before it spiraled out of control. But I didn't see it for what it was. I trusted her. I loved her. The drive to Gabe's cabin wasn't going to be an easy one, according to MapQuest. I decided to leave my Honda Accord behind and rented a four-wheel drive SUV instead. The route looked rough. Winding mountain roads for the last 20 miles, then 3 more miles on dirt trails. I'd been to the Adirondacks before. The landscape was rugged, unforgiving. Gabe's retreat was southwest of Saranac Lake, nearly a 4-hour drive from home. My GPS only mapped the last 5 miles. Eventually, we left the main road and turned onto a narrow, half-paved stretch that led to a wooden bridge. It was sturdy and had been recently repaired, but it spanned a deep ravine, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there might not be another way out. The GPS didn't show an alternate route. A sense of unease settled in. 3 miles down a deeply rutted dirt road, we finally arrived. The cabin stood in a wide clearing, nestled below the peak of a towering mountain. The view stretched across endless rolling peaks, untouched, isolated. The house itself was an oversized, modern log home, built to mimic an old-fashioned mountain lodge but loaded with luxury. Everything about it screamed wealth and extravagance. Gabe had gone all out. No doubt he was trying to impress someone, and I was certain that person wasn't me. As I pulled into the neatly maintained parking area, I noticed 3 high-end vehicles already parked. Everything was pristine, carefully curated. Even before stepping inside, I could tell this wasn't just a casual getaway. A group of 6 people stood waiting for us on the wide, wraparound porch, which was lined with Adirondack chairs and rustic decorations. 3 were men, Gabe and 2 of his college buddies. Ken Lewis, the shortest of them at about 5'10", was built like a bodybuilder. He was pushing 30, balding like Gabe but packed with muscle beneath his snug t-shirt and shorts. Glenn Sachs was taller, around 6 feet, with leaner features and a mop of curly blonde hair. He carried himself with a bit more charm than Ken. He stood with his arm around a woman, Sharon. She was striking, with curves in all the right places. She looked at least 30, maybe older, which made her a good decade senior to Glenn. Beside Ken was Robin, a lively brunette who appeared to be in her early 30s. She was petite but well-proportioned, and her figure was almost too curvy for her small frame. It was obvious she and Ken were together. The last woman in the group was Paula Henry. Her beauty was sharp and deliberate, the kind that made people stare but not always in admiration. She was tall, with long brown hair and a face that carried an air of intelligence, perhaps even superiority. Paula was clearly the youngest among the women, a longtime friend of the guys. The whole group was welcoming, too welcoming. Their smiles stretched a little too wide, their enthusiasm a little too forced. Something about the greeting felt off. Gabe barely glanced at me before greeting my wife first. Meanwhile, Paula gave me a look that made me feel like a specimen under a microscope. Dinner was already prepared, so we quickly dropped our bags in the room we'd been assigned. a modest second-floor bedroom, conveniently located right next to the master suite where Gabe was staying. We gathered in the great room, a sprawling 40 by 40-foot space that served as the cabin's living, dining, and entertainment area. The massive oak dining table was set for a feast, though the meal itself was a collection of upscale microwave entrees, pricey but effortless. Wine flowed freely, and despite my attempts to pace myself, Gabe kept refilling my glass. After dinner, we moved outside to a spacious terrace, where a sleek gas fireplace flickered in the cool night air. The liquor got stronger, then came the dope. It didn't take long to realize this weekend was about excess, heavy drinking, recreational pills, and who knew what else. As the night wore on, I started piecing things together. On the surface, it looked like an innocent holiday weekend with my boss, his old college friends, and their partners. But the more I listened and observed, the more I realized something was off. It didn't take long to uncover the cracks. Robin had a fiancée, not here. Sharon was married with 2 kids and a husband who believed she was off on a spa retreat with a friend. Infidelity wasn't hidden. It was treated as entertainment. Paula, however, barely looked away from me. She wasn't part of their dynamic. That much was clear. You might assume she was with Gabe, but she didn't seem remotely bothered by his blatant flirting with my wife. In fact, he spent most of the night sandwiched between Gloria and Paula. Gabe dominated the conversation, directing most of it toward Gloria. Whenever I tried to engage Paula, she responded with detached politeness, making it clear she wasn't interested in small talk. By midnight, I could tell the night was winding down, but the atmosphere in the group shifted. There was an unspoken anticipation, like they were all waiting for something. Then Gabe turned to me. "Lyle, you must be exhausted from that long drive." Gloria's voice was syrupy sweet. "Yes, honey. Why don't you go to bed? I'll join you later." I clenched my jaw. Not happening. "Not until I've had another drink," I said, grabbing the bottle. I turned to Gabe. "Unless you'd like to join me?" I forced a smile, but inside I was seething. This man, my boss, was openly pursuing my wife. And Gloria? What the hell was she doing? Just like at the Christmas party, she had spent the whole night at his side, laughing at his jokes, basking in his attention. Was she actually falling for him? After 16 years of marriage, had she chosen my boss over me? I wasn't leaving. If it was a waiting game, I was playing to win. Eventually, Gloria followed me upstairs. She slipped into the shower alone. I didn't join her. There was no point. When she came out, she was colder than usual. Silent. I stepped into the shower myself, rinsing off quickly, but the feeling in my gut didn't wash away. Something was already broken. I just hadn't figured out how deep the cracks ran yet. When I stepped out of the bathroom, I expected to find Gloria curled up under the blankets, already asleep. Instead, she sat at the edge of the bed, completely bare, her posture relaxed but purposeful. "Come here," she murmured, patting the space beside her. I hesitated but sat down next to her. She turned to face me, her expression unreadable. "I just want to enjoy myself this weekend," she said softly. "Life has been exhausting. I've worked hard, really hard, and I think I deserve a little fun." I nodded. "I have no issue with that. You've been an incredible wife and mother through tough times. You put me through law school, took care of our kids when my paycheck barely covered the bills, and still managed to go back to school yourself. You've earned everything you have, and that includes the incredible shape you're in now. You still do more than your share at home, and I couldn't be prouder to be your husband." The morning light spilled through the uncovered windows, illuminating the room in soft gold. Normally, Gloria would be up before dawn, lacing up her running shoes and heading out for her morning jog. But the effects of last night's booze and dope had slowed her down. I got out of bed, pulled the curtains closed, and made my way to the small but well-equipped bathroom. A hot shower and a shave later, I headed downstairs, the house still eerily quiet. With time to kill, I decided to explore. The great room opened onto a sprawling patio, complete with a built-in fire pit and an outdoor barbecue setup. A short set of stairs led to a raised terrace where a small steaming pool and sauna stood, seemingly out of place in the cool mountain air. At first, the presence of open water in such a frigid environment struck me as impractical, until I noticed the entire area was heated. A glance up the slope revealed an array of solar panels installed along the ridge. That was likely the power source, possibly even supplying energy to the entire property. Beyond the terrace, I spotted a small barn. No livestock, just a collection of ATVs, snowmobiles, and compact tractors for maintenance. As I wandered past, I caught the faint sound of running water. Following the noise, I found a narrow stream trickling behind another locked structure. This one had a small chimney protruding from its roof. Peering through a dust-coated window, I spotted a generator and fuel tanks, a backup power source, emergency fuel reserves. Whoever designed this place had thought of everything. It was built to be self-sufficient, prepared for anything. The stream itself was shallow, just a few inches deep. At first I dismissed the idea of it holding any fish until I saw one leap from the water. Thinking of fishing? I turned sharply, caught off guard. Paula stood a few feet behind me. No, I admitted. I used to, though, back when I had more time. She smirked. Shame. Might have kept you occupied this weekend. You fish? I asked. She shook her head. No, like you, I have other priorities. Her gaze shifted toward the distant peaks. How about breakfast, then a hike? Seems ridiculous to come all the way out here and not take in the view. Back inside, she placed a fresh pot of coffee into the stainless steel machine while I rummaged through the pantry. It was stocked with microwavable meals, convenient, expensive, impersonal. I chose instant oatmeal. She did the same. The house remained eerily silent. They'll probably be sleeping in for a while, Paula said. Still up for that hike? She clearly knew the way, leading me directly to a narrow, well-worn trail that wound its way up the mountain. The summit didn't seem far at first glance, but after an hour of climbing, it still loomed just as high as when we had started. Are you sure you want to keep going? I asked, catching my breath. She shot me a teasing look. What, are you giving up, old man? I smirked. Just wondering if anyone back at the house will notice we're gone. Paula shrugged. I doubt anyone will care. Eventually, we reached the top. The sun was nearly overhead, marking it close to noon. The summit itself was unremarkable, a flat plateau with worn edges. Two ancient wooden benches sat facing east, overlooking the valley and the rolling peaks beyond. A layer of mist curled over the landscape, blurring the view. The air was crisp, refreshing. A steady breeze swept through, cool but not uncomfortable. Paula stretched out her legs and leaned back on her hands. Mind if we rest a bit before heading down? Not at all, I said, lowering myself onto the bench. The old man could use a break. She chuckled at that. After a brief silence, I turned to her. So, Glenn's a broker, Ken's a banker, and Gabe's in development. We spent all of last night talking, but I never caught what you do. She studied me for a moment, as if deciding how much to share. I'm an inspector, she finally said. Government work. Nothing exciting. Ever inspect anyone I know? I asked casually. She gave a non-committal shrug. Not recently. Back in college, though, I was always helping these guys, covering for them when their girlfriends came looking, slipping them notes before exams. They've always been on the edge. That's just who they are. It's what makes them different. Is that still your job, covering for them? Her expression didn't change. What's the point of shutting the barn door after the horse is bolted? Rules just slow people down. The smart ones push forward. The rest fall behind. It's how things work. I watched her carefully. So, what's your role this weekend? You didn't seem too interested in last night's party. For the first time, she hesitated. My question had caught her off guard. I stood up and wandered toward the clearing's edge, scanning the descent. There was no alternate route, no back road. Just one narrow path leading down, the same one we had taken up. One way in, one way out. I turned back to her, my expression unreadable. Had she thought about that? The others were too caught up in their indulgences to consider the bigger picture. But Paula, she was watching, calculating. She had to see things the same way I did. I'm just here to keep things under control, she finally said. Make sure things don't get too messy. You mean unless the Golden Boys need you? She tilted her head slightly. I wouldn't put it that way, but I understand what's best for them, and for everyone else, in the long run. I exhaled slowly. Ready to head back? She stretched, then stood. What's the rush? I gestured toward the steep slope. The way down is trickier. A misstep could be dangerous. She smirked. So why not stay at the top a little longer? But she still turned and started the descent. We made it back to the cabin without any trouble, but an uneasy feeling settled deeper in my gut. By the pool, the others had gathered, and the scene that greeted me turned my stomach. I had never seen Gloria in a black bikini before. It wasn't just revealing, it was practically painted onto her. accentuating every curve in a way I had never even seen at the beach. The other women were dressed similarly, but my focus locked solely on her. As Paula and I stepped closer, my gaze landed on something far worse. Gloria was sitting on Gabe's lap, her lips pressed to his in a slow, deep kiss. "We're back!" Paula called, forcing them apart. Gabe grinned like a kid caught sneaking cookies before dinner, amused, but not remotely ashamed. Gloria's smile was too bright, too forced. "Where were you two?" she asked lightly, as if making polite conversation with an acquaintance rather than her husband. The silence that followed was thick and uncomfortable. My fists clenched involuntarily, but before I could react, Paula slipped her hand into mine. "Well," she said breezily, "we missed lunch, and since we conquered that mountain, I think we've earned something to eat." Without waiting for a response, she pulled me toward the cabin. As we walked away, I heard laughter behind us. I don't remember what she made, or if I even ate. What I do remember is the weight of the glass she pressed into my hand, filled with dark Johnny Walker. "Think before you act," she advised, her voice low and steady. "It's just a weekend in an otherwise good marriage. Don't do something you'll regret. Think about your family." By the time we returned to the pool, the group had moved into the jacuzzi. The air was thick with laughter and intoxication. Gloria was still in Gabe's lap, her body half submerged in the bubbling water. I couldn't see their hands, but I didn't need to. I already knew. A joint passed from person to person. They were all high. Paula chose a seat where she had a clear view of everything happening, positioning herself between me and the hot tub like some sort of unspoken barrier. I raised the glass to my lips, pretending to drink, then turned and walked away. Once I was out of sight, I poured the whiskey onto the grass. Jealousy burned through me, tangled with something else, something darker, a strange mix of anger and reluctant admiration. I was proud of Gloria. She had transformed herself, no longer the soft, round-faced girl I had married, but a lean, powerful woman who drew attention wherever she went. It was only natural that men desired her, but in the process of sculpting that body, had she lost something else? Watching her with Gabe was infuriating, yet at the same time, something about it unsettled me in ways I couldn't explain. The image of them together lingered in my mind, a grotesque fusion of rage and reluctant fascination. I wandered the property, trying to distract myself, studying every detail of the lodge's layout. Anything to kill time, anything to delay what felt inevitable. Eventually, understanding that I needed to be in full control of myself before making any decisions, I returned to our bedroom and forced myself to lie down. But my thoughts wouldn't let me rest. Why was she doing this? We had built a life together, survived financial struggles, sleepless nights with sick children, the grind of scraping by while I built my career. We had just started to breathe easy, reaching a point of stability. Our kids were older, independent. Gloria had a steady career. After years of struggle, I was finally earning good money. Our debts were manageable. The future was bright. So why throw it all away? For someone like Gabe? Gabe was nothing, a man who thrived on image rather than substance. He had never designed a site plan, built a home, or made a sale on his own merit. He was simply the one holding the keys to an empire constructed by others. A flashy prodigy with little more than confidence and timing. So what was she thinking? She had told me she just wanted to enjoy herself. Was this her idea of fun? And where did it end? At some point, exhaustion overtook me and I drifted into uneasy sleep. When I finally emerged from the bedroom, the party had shifted indoors. Lunch had come and gone, the drinks still flowed, the joint still circulated. Gloria was back in Gabe's lap. No one was pretending anymore. Bikini tops had vanished. Every woman in the room was bare-chested now, including Paula, who seemed to be sharing Ken with Robin. I didn't stop. I walked straight through, heading for the kitchen. I needed something real, something tangible to ground me. I was heating up a meal in the microwave when Gloria entered. "How are you?" she asked casually. I didn't turn around. "I could be better." She hesitated, then spoke again, her tone deliberately measured. "I spent the evening with Gabe." I kept my focus on the microwave, watching the timer count down. "I noticed," I said flatly. The machine beeped. She smiled, but there was something unreadable in it, something detached. "No," she clarified, "I mean tonight, in his room." I didn't move, didn't let her see my face, didn't let her see the wound split open inside me. "I see," I said simply. She waited. "And what about 16 years of marriage?" I asked finally. She sighed, as if I was missing the point. That's why I can do this, she said. It's just a weekend. Nothing changes. Next week, I'll be your wife again. I let out a slow breath. And Gabe? He won't mind? She stepped closer, wrapping her arms around me from behind, pressing herself against my back. Gabe likes you, she whispered. Says you have potential, says you're going places. This is just a fling. Just a little fun. That's all. Her voice was soft, almost coaxing. I said nothing. After a moment, I asked, Do I get a choice? She let go. Not really, she admitted. It's already decided. I just wanted you to know. Then she turned and left. I followed her to the doorway, stopping just short of stepping into the great room. She was already at the stairs. Gabe stood at the top, waiting for her. As they ascended together, he glanced back, catching my eye. He smirked, gave me a thumbs up, as if we were part of the same joke. Then he leaned in, whispered something into Gloria's ear. She turned, smiled at me, waved. I didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at the empty space where she had just been. 16 years. Every struggle, every sacrifice, every late night spent working to build a future together. Gone. I turned away from the kitchen counter, yanked the steaming food from the microwave, and tossed it straight into the trash. The thought of eating made my stomach churn. Instead, I reached for the coffee maker, filling it with water. It was going to be a long night. As the coffee brewed, I heard soft footsteps behind me. Turning, I found Paula standing in the doorway, watching me with mild amusement. I didn't expect to find someone drinking coffee at this hour, she remarked. Wouldn't something stronger make more sense? To each their own, I replied evenly, meeting her gaze. But tell me, what exactly is your role in all of this? She gave a small, indifferent shrug. I keep the peace. Make sure things don't get out of hand. And how do you plan to do that? By sleeping with me? She laughed lightly. No, I wouldn't go that far, but don't worry, you'll get your wife back. Maybe even with a little extra incentive. So, I said slowly, there's money involved. Isn't there always? She lifted a brow, her expression unreadable. You can't make a scene. You work for Gabe. You have a family to think about. So really, what option do you have? You take what you're given. This is their world. You're just passing through. That's how it's always been. A sharp moan echoed down the stairs. Loud, unmistakable. Gloria's voice. Paula smirked. Well, seems like she's having a fantastic time. Beautiful weekend in the mountains, huh? I said nothing. She chuckled. Oh, don't be so dramatic. It's all just an illusion. And apparently deciding I was no threat, she turned and left me there, standing in the silence of the kitchen, alone with my coffee and my thoughts. By the time the house finally quieted, it was past 3 in the morning. I waited another 30 minutes, then moved upstairs. As I passed by the master bedroom door, I heard them. Sounds of pleasure, deep and uninhibited. Gloria's voice filled with raw ecstasy. She had always been quiet with me, but with him, she sounded completely different. Gabe was younger, stronger. He knew how to take what he wanted. I suppose she had found exactly what she was looking for in his bed. I turned away, walked into the guest room, and took a long, scalding shower. Then I dressed in my warmest clothes, bracing for the cold outside. I tried to ignore the noises coming through the walls. By 4 a.m., the house had fallen into silence. I waited a little longer, then headed downstairs. In one of the kitchen cabinets, I found a flashlight, candles, and matches. Basic emergency supplies. I pocketed them and stepped out into the crisp night air. The moon had already set, leaving the mountain shrouded in darkness. The air was alive with the faint rustling of unseen creatures, the whisper of wind through the trees. To someone like me, used to the hum of the city, it felt unnervingly silent. I walked toward the barn. It wasn't hard to find. Inside, among the neatly arranged tools and equipment, I spotted exactly what I needed. A 20-gallon plastic canister filled with high-octane motorsports fuel. Next to it, a wrench. The generator shed was locked, but the hinges were rusted. The wrench took care of them easily. The lodge had a well-maintained manual pump for transferring fuel. In less than 10 minutes, I had filled the canister. Carrying it carefully, I moved around the perimeter of the house, making sure not to make a sound. When I reached my rental SUV, I placed the can in the back, released the handbrake, and shifted into neutral. Then, as quietly as possible, I let the vehicle roll down the dirt road before starting the engine and driving off. I took my time approaching the bridge. Pulling over, I grabbed the fuel canister and walked onto the wooden structure. It was a solid piece of craftsmanship, expertly built, strong enough to last for decades. It had been constructed by real workers, built for men like Gabe, parasites who thrived off the labor of others, taking without ever truly creating. The fun was over. I poured the gasoline in slow, deliberate streams, ensuring it soaked deep into the wood. Then I struck a match. A faint hiss, a flicker of blue-orange light. Then the fire took hold. Within seconds, flames roared to life, consuming the wood hungrily, licking at the support beams. Heat radiated outward as the inferno grew, crackling with deadly intensity. A sharp crack. Then another. The bridge groaned, weakened by the fire. Soon, the structure would give way entirely. The flames would be visible for miles. I turned without a second glance, walked back to the SUV, and drove away. There was no need to rush. By the time they realized what had happened, they'd be stranded, cut off. By dawn, I had reached a gas station. I refilled the SUV's tank, left the empty can by the pumps, and drove off. The last physical link between me and the fire, gone. By 9 a.m., I had returned the rental and picked up my own car. I went home, showered again, dressed casually, and headed to the office. There were just a couple of things left to take care of before I severed my connection with Countryman Real Estate for good. Bernie had been a good boss, but forgetful. He used to call me all the time when he needed something retrieved from his office. As a result, I still had keys to every door and filing cabinet. Gabe, however, was meticulous. His desk, an oversized mahogany monstrosity, had a built-in safe. Unfortunately for him, he wasn't careful with his security measures. The combination was stored in a folder labeled Security, locked in a filing cabinet. I had the key. Within 20 minutes, I was inside his files. I retrieved exactly what I needed. His password log? Accessing the company's financial system was easy. It would have been tempting to drain the account completely, but outright theft would only land me in prison. Instead, I simply rerouted all of Countryman's operating funds, nearly $20 million, into an old trust account that had been created years ago and subsequently forgotten. The money was still there, legally speaking. But it would take days for anyone to track it down. By Tuesday morning, when the company's electronic payments were supposed to process, they would be hitting an account that no longer functioned. Hundreds of transactions would bounce. Banks would be calling. Creditors would be demanding explanations. Countrymen ran on credit. Without it, the entire operation would grind to a halt. And with any luck, Gabe would still be stuck in the mountains when it all unraveled. Before I left, I printed my resignation letter and placed it on his secretary's desk. As I was walking out, my phone rang. Gloria. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the message came through. Her voice was soft, uncertain. Baby, where are you? The car is gone. No one knows what happened. I'm really worried. Please call me. I shouldn't have listened. But I did. Half an hour later, my phone rang again. This time it was Gabe. Hey, Lyle, everything all right? Gloria's really worried. Give her a call, man. There was something in his tone, an edge, a quiet warning. I smirked but said nothing. By Sunday, Gloria had called 3 more times. Gabe had called twice. The second time, he had lost all patience. Listen, man, call me back, now. Monday morning, I went to pick up the kids from Gloria's parents. As I was leaving, my phone rang again. This time it was Gloria. Lyle, I'll be home tonight, she said, her voice tense but firm. We need to talk. If you get this, just call me, okay? This is ridiculous. I had no doubt she wasn't coming home. When I arrived at her parents' house, they were already waiting. Gloria called, her mother said cautiously. She said you might be coming alone. You need to call her, her father added, his tone almost scolding. She says she's coming back tonight, her mother echoed, watching me carefully. I shook my head. I think it's best if we talk in person, I said. There are things we need to discuss. They didn't seem satisfied with that answer, but they couldn't force me to explain. As I turned to leave, my daughter hesitated, looking up at me. Is something wrong? She asked, her voice small. This is between your mother and me, I told her gently. It's only fair that we wait for her so we can talk. I took the kids home and got them settled. Then I went to the bedroom that used to be mine, picked up the phone, and dialed Felix Rodriguez. He answered on the second ring. Lyle, how's it going? Felix greeted me, his usual friendly tone in place. Not great, I admitted. Felix, I need your help. His voice turned serious. Oh? What's going on? I need to file for divorce. Felix paused, then let out a dry chuckle. Come on, don't joke about something like that. I'm not joking, I said flatly. Gloria's been sleeping with my boss, Gabriel Zillo. There was a sharp exhale from the other end of the line. Damn. I'm sorry, man. What do I do? I asked. Felix and I spent the next hour going over my options. By the end of the call, we scheduled an appointment for Tuesday afternoon to begin the process. Meanwhile, the calls from the mountain continued. Apparently, her parents had pressured her to keep trying to reach me. Gloria's messages ranged from apologetic to desperate. Gabe's tone also shifted. The aggression had disappeared, replaced by an awkward attempt at diplomacy. Hey man, if I messed up, I'm sorry, Gabe said in a voicemail. I don't want what happened this weekend to ruin our professional relationship. That wouldn't be good for either of us, if you know what I mean. Then just before 5, another voicemail came through. Gloria's voice, shaky this time. Lyle, please call me. Something happened. The bridge is gone. We're stranded. Call me. I need to talk to you. I didn't respond. Tuesday morning, I met Stephen Pender for lunch at a diner in a shopping center. Between bites of his sandwich, he eyed me. You sure about this? He asked. It's done, I confirmed. I already resigned. As if on cue, my phone rang. Donna, my former secretary. Lyle, what the hell is going on? She asked, her voice strained with stress. They said you quit, but you need to come in. Everything is falling apart. I remained unfazed. Not my problem anymore, Donna. Call Gabe. They can't. He's stuck in the mountains. Something about a bridge. I let out a low chuckle. That's unfortunate. Well, she sighed after a moment, I'm sure it'll all get sorted out. I didn't reply. Across the table, Stephen studied me. Something I should know. Not really, I said, taking another bite. Nothing that concerns me anymore. Stephen considered me for a moment, then nodded. Well, if you're serious about joining us, I think I can bump up my last offer by 10 grand a year. I wiped my mouth with a napkin. How soon do you need me to start? Tomorrow would be great. Then I'll see you in the morning. By Wednesday, I was officially working at Pender and Partners. I had barely settled in when my office door burst open. Gabe. His face was flushed red, his breathing heavy with anger. Where's my money, you son of a witch? He spat. I leaned back in my chair, cool and composed. What money? Don't play dumb. The operating funds, he snapped. I shrugged. Maybe check with your accountants. If I have to do that, I'll sue you for embezzlement, he snarled. I smirked. He had managed to get off the mountain, but by now, he must have realized the funds were gone. You think you're some kind of genius, he sneered, his voice dripping with venom. But you're just a pathetic little man who couldn't even satisfy his wife. She had the best night of her life with me, and I'll have her again whenever I want. I let him storm out without a word. The next day, the police called. Mr. Jetterman, we need you to come in for questioning. I sighed. I just started a new job. My time is limited. If you have questions, you can send them in writing, and I'll respond accordingly. Sir, that's not how this works. I'm a lawyer, I cut him off. I do everything in writing. The officer hesitated. We'll be in touch. I knew they wouldn't move forward without investigating first. They'd have to trace the money. They wouldn't find anything stolen, just funds sitting untouched in a trust account. Still, I'd underestimated the consequences. Within 2 weeks, Countryman Real Estate was in crisis. With its credit frozen and payments bouncing, the company needed an urgent financial infusion to stay afloat. By Friday evening, Gloria showed up at my house. She tried her key. It didn't work. I had changed the locks. She knocked. I opened the door. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen. She looked exhausted. Lyle, please, let me in. If not for me, then for the kids. I met her gaze coldly. No, you don't live here anymore. Your car's on the street. I assume you still have the keys. Her voice cracked. Do you really hate me that much? Yes. And I shut the door. I knew she would go to her parents. The next day, I instructed Felix to serve her with divorce papers and file a restraining order. The brief period of isolation I had gained by destroying the bridge turned out to be invaluable. In that time, Felix secured a restraining order, and I was awarded temporary custody of the kids. Gloria fought back, of course. It took her 2 months, and likely every dime she had left, to even present a viable case. By then, the divorce proceedings were well underway, and all that remained were the final legal formalities. Gabe, however, wasn't as fortunate. Countryman Real Estate collapsed completely, shutting its doors right after Labor Day. The following week, I received an unexpected visitor. When I returned from closing my third deal of the day, I found him sitting in my office. He looked completely at ease, his tanned skin contrasting with the early autumn chill. Dressed in lightweight clothes, he appeared refreshed, like a man who had been enjoying a long vacation. "Bernie," I greeted, genuinely surprised. "What brings you back to the frozen north?" He flashed a grin, taking in my modest office with a knowing glance. "Florida's nice, but the real sharks aren't in the water. Thought it'd be smart to get back to familiar territory." I smirked. "Probably a wise move." Leaning forward, Bernie's expression turned more serious. "I lost a good chunk of money down there. Need to start fresh, small but stable. Lucky for me, I see an opportunity." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh," his grin widened. "A certain company I used to own? Turns out it's available for a pretty reasonable price now." I laughed, shaking my head. "So what's your angle, you old pirate?" "I need a partner," he said, his tone casual but firm. "At my age, the banks won't touch me unless they see continuity. And, well, you and I, we made a damn good team. What do you say?" I sighed, leaning back. "I don't have much money to invest. You might have heard. I'm going through a divorce." Bernie nodded, his expression unreadable. "Yeah, I heard." I wondered how much he actually knew. The story had spread quickly. "Look," he said, "why don't I give you 10%? I scoffed. 50, he chuckled. "Be reasonable. You just admitted you're broke." "And I bet you're not," I countered. "Fine, I'll take 45. 25's fair," he said, testing the waters. "Not enough." 40, he offered. Then, after a pause, added, "With the option to buy another 10% in 10 years. I smirked. "Deal." Bernie shook my hand firmly. "Hope I live long enough to see it." Just like that, we were back in business. We bought up every property that had belonged to countrymen, securing them at bargain prices from the banks that now held them. Using those same banks' financing, we started building again. It wasn't easy at first, but the company took off. Soon, we had a thriving operation, developing and selling homes at a steady pace. Life moved forward. So did my divorce. Most of the legal battle revolved around custody arrangements. Eventually, we settled on a complicated joint custody system. That's how I ended up coming home to a dark, empty house on Christmas Eve. Gloria had the kids for the holiday. I was supposed to have them the next day since Christmas fell on a Sunday. They'd return to her on Monday. Neither of them liked the arrangement. As I approached my front door, I noticed a figure sitting on the steps, bundled against the cold and the slow drift of falling snow. I was nearly at the door before I recognized her. Gloria. I stopped. "What are you doing here?" She looked up, her face thin and hollow-eyed. She had lost weight since I'd last seen her. It was obvious she had been crying. "I want to come home," she whispered, her voice hoarse. I ignored her words. "Where are the kids?" "With my parents," she admitted. "They want to come home too. We all do. We want to be a family again." "In our house?" I said nothing. She stared at me for a long moment before her expression twisted. "What you did to us was unfair," I scoffed. "I didn't do anything." Her lips pressed together before she let out a long breath. "Fine. That's true," she admitted. "I made a mistake. Okay. A bad mistake. An offensive mistake. But it was just one mistake. You're the one who blew up our family." Her voice wavered between resentment and sorrow. She took a shaky breath, steadying herself. "I told myself I wouldn't get angry," she murmured, "but I can't help it." I crossed my arms. "You have anger issues now?" "Don't act innocent," she shot back, her voice sharp. "You're not. You were just faster at getting ahead of everyone else. I'm not stupid, Lyle. You weren't exactly a saint." I shook my head. "And you really think sleeping with another man right in front of me wasn't going to destroy everything?" She turned away, wrapping her arms around herself. "I was always the fat girl," she murmured, "the last one to be asked to dance. I had to take what I could get. I tried to be a good girl, to ignore the crude jokes, to wait for the right guy all through high school, most of college. Then I met you, and I thought I'd finally found him." Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. "I was a maiden when we got married," she continued, her words slow and deliberate. "I never made a big deal about it, but I thought you knew. You weren't perfect, Lyle. You weren't some prince. But I loved you. You were a little smarter, a little more ambitious, but we were always broke. And I accepted that because I loved you. But it hurt, watching you struggle, watching us struggle." She wiped her nose with the sleeve of her coat. "Then Gabe came along, and suddenly life didn't seem so difficult anymore. He had everything a woman could want, and for once, someone like him wanted me. It felt different. She hesitated before continuing. After the Christmas party, he kept calling. It wasn't serious at first, just flirting. You know how it is. Beautiful women get attention all the time. It wasn't like I'd never had other men interested in me before, but this was different. He wasn't just anyone. He was someone powerful, someone who mattered. Her voice softened. He told me how lucky I was to have you, how hard you worked, how you deserved to succeed. He acted like he admired you. I laughed coldly. I'm sure he did. She nodded. That's what I thought, too. He talked about how much he respected you, how he wanted to help you. I knew what he was implying. If I was nice to him, he'd take care of you, and I let myself believe it. I convinced myself that if I gave in, you'd win. She sighed, shaking her head. But that's only part of the truth. The other part is, I wanted him. There was this voice in my head pulling me toward him, a mix of fear and excitement. By the time we got to the cabin, I didn't want to resist anymore. She turned to me, her eyes pleading, raw with desperation. I asked you, she whispered. In my own way, I asked you. Don't you remember? I told you I just wanted to have fun and you didn't say no. You didn't ask me, I said, my voice steady. You told me you were going to sleep with him. She swallowed hard. Not in so many words, she admitted. But you knew. And you didn't stop me. Tears spilled down her cheeks, falling unchecked. For 16 years, Lyle, I believed in you. We built a life together. How could you do this to me? I exhaled sharply. That's exactly it, Gloria. We did have a life together. And you threw it away for what? A weekend? You expect me to forget the way you screamed for him? That we can just go back to normal? She let out a bitter, humorless laugh. That wasn't real, she said. It was an act, a performance. That's what men like him want. I was playing a role, Lyle. You know that's not who I am in bed. You know me. I shook my head, my voice colder than I intended. I only know what you did. How you humiliated me. You chose him. The golden boy, a parasite who takes everything and gives nothing. She flinched as if I had struck her, but I didn't stop. So where is he now? I asked. Where was he when things started to fall apart? She hesitated, then lowered her gaze. I'll tell you exactly where, she said, voice hollow. He ran, just like all of them do. Her shoulders trembled as she took a shaky breath. This world puts men like Gabe on a pedestal, calling them visionaries, pretending they're special. But tell me, Lyle, how did this genius get off that mountain so fast? I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She let out a hollow laugh. He called a damn helicopter, that's how. I clenched my jaw. He already suspected you had done something, she continued. He thought you stole his money. The moment he saw the bridge was gone, he panicked. The others freaked out. Paula kept insisting it didn't make sense, that the money couldn't have just vanished. She shook her head, a bitter smile tugging at the corners of her lips. When the helicopter arrived, there was only room for one. And guess who took the seat? I didn't have to guess. The rest of us? She continued. We were stranded. It took the National Guard setting up a temporary bridge before we could get out. Sharon and I came back together, but by then her husband knew everything. Her marriage was over. Robin's fiancé called off the wedding. Glenn and Ken got caught up in their own mess, but I think Paula bailed them out. In the end, Gabe walked away clean, and the rest of us were left to deal with the fallout. She turned her tired, swollen eyes to mine. But haven't we both suffered enough? I stared at her. She wasn't wrong. I had worked for Gabe. I had known the truth about men like him, but never wanted to admit it. I had played along, pretending I was different, but none of that changed how it had happened. We went through hell together, I said, and we survived. We fought. We sacrificed. But the moment things got comfortable, you took the one thing I could never get back. Home. You made me realize something I can't unsee. It was all an illusion. I turned toward my empty, darkened house. Behind me, she made one last attempt. Tell me the truth, she said. Would you rather spend tonight alone in that house? Or would you rather be with me and the kids sitting by the Christmas tree? I turned back to face her. It would be so easy to reach for her, to pull her close, to tell her I forgave her, to bring the kids home and sit by the fireplace, pretending nothing had ever happened. But I couldn't. I let out a slow breath. That's a great question, I said quietly. But I don't have an answer. And just like that, we turned away from each other. The past was unchangeable. The future was all that remained.